Jai Shri Krishna, Namaskar and Sat Shri Akal to all the viewers for the day. As usual, we will initiate the session with the grace of the Divine Power and our Master for chanting invocation shlokas. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Vidvishavagai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwaraha Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namaskar. Welcome to the series of Stress-Free Life in Stressful Times. Welcome to the glorious grand finale, the sixth session. Eagerly waiting for this session. Just to remind you all, thus far we have covered amazing topics entitled Warrior to Warrior, Laugh to Live, Can Spirituality and Materialism Coexist, Nama Japa, the path to happiness, and Guru, the path to freedom. Today we take a most significant, important, and I think it will touch the chord with everyone else, mastering the mind, which seems to be having no clue how one can do it. Without any ado, I will be requesting the speakers for today. As we all know, Mahatma Giri, welcome to the session, and Mahatma Srini. With the blessings of Guruji, let him preside over the session. I'll hand it over without any further ado. Jai Shri Krishna.
Thank you, Mata. Jai Shri Krishna and Sat Shri Akal to all. So we are in the last session today of Mastering the Mind. This is a topic all by itself. Actually, it can cover 6 sessions if you so wish, but we will attempt to do whatever we can in a session. The entire Bhagavad Gita covers this topic alone, because if you think about the context of the Bhagavad Gita, here was Arjuna, the greatest of warriors, who knew that he alone could subdue in the Kaurava side the 3 great warriors like Drona, Bhishma and Karna, who single-handedly could prevent Pandavas from winning the Mahabharata war. And Arjuna was the only person in the Pandava side who could subdue them, because he was the only archer of that repute in the Pandava side. And yet when the Mahabharata war starts, here is Arjuna who suffers a psychological breakdown. He has forgotten, he has mastered the Astra, he has mastered the Shastra, but he has not mastered his own mind. So the entire Bhagavad Gita is a lesson from the Lord to Arjuna on how to master the mind. 700 verses, of which about 48 in the first chapter, Arjuna alone speaks, the Lord doesn't speak, and about 10-15 verses in the rest of the Bhagavad Gita are questions or statements by Arjuna. The rest of the almost 650 odd verses are all the Lord's verses, instructions to Arjuna on how to master the mind. So what we are attempting to do is a Herculean Himalayan task. Therefore, we will have to end up with looking at certain aspects of mastering the mind alone. That's what we will do. The Vedas, the Upanishads also talk about in great length about mastering the mind, because they have understood, the Vedas, Upanishads, which talk about how to live a life. The world teaches us how to earn a living, right? But they don't teach us, the world doesn't teach us about how to live a life. Earn a living, yes. Live a life, no. The Vedas, Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, they are the texts which are manuals for day-to-day living. We have forgotten the art of day-to-day living, because we have understood the art of earning a living, but not how to live a life. That is the reality. So therefore, if I ask an audience of any size as to who was happier, whether it was your grandfather, grandmother, or great-grandfather, great-grandmother, or this generation which lives now, almost every time I get the answer that it was the grandfather or the great-grandfather's generation, which was more peaceful and more satisfied, more contented, therefore more happy. Whereas the current generation, which earns 10,000, 1 lakh times what the grandfather or the great grandfather earned, yet is not as happy as them, has thousands of more suvidhas, has thousands of more items of comfort, but yet is not more happy or peaceful. That is the reality of our life today. Think about it. So if that becomes the reality, the cause for that reality has got to be only one. And that cause is, in the past, they knew how to master their mind. We have very well learned how to earn a living, but not about how to live a life, which involves in a big part mastering the mind. Therefore, the Vedas and the Upanishads said, Mana eva karanam manushyanam bandha mokshayoho. Mana eva, the mind alone, eva, they use the word eva very, very infrequently. They don't use that frequently in the Vedas. Because that ekavachan, that eva, means it is the only, the most significant cause. What is that? Mana, the mind, eva karanam. The mind alone is the reason. Manushyanam, human beings, bandha mokshayoho. Bandha, for bandhan, for bondage, the mind is the karan. For moksha, for liberation, the mind is the reason. This is the way the Vedas and the Upanishads set about the problem statement. Then the rest of the Vedas and Upanishads are the reasons why one should master the mind and how one can go about mastering the mind. Of course, some parts of the Veda is also dedicated to what is the mind, right? So today we will be talking about this topic in 3 parts as usual. The first part will be introduced by Giriji about why master the mind, in which he will talk about the advantages of mastering the mind and the negative effects of not mastering the mind. He will talk about it from both perspectives. I will talk about how to master the mind. 1 or 2 parts from Giriji's talk I'll pick up, inherited, the problems, and I will say how to master the mind. Giriji will also talk about how to master the mind. He will pick up 1 or 2 parts of his first part of his talk, why master the mind, and then he will also talk about how to master the mind with respect to those issues. That's the construct of the talk. See, look, there was a person who was a camel herder, and that camel herder was taking a flock of camels across the desert. So he wanted to stop at an oasis. He stopped there. He found he had rope for binding all the camels except one camel. He had forgotten the rope for that camel. So he was afraid the camel might wander away during the night. So he wanted an extra piece of rope. In the oasis, there was only a sannyasi's ashram. Apart from this camel herder who had stopped there for the night, he went to the sannyasi's ashram and asked if he could borrow a piece of rope for tying down the camel. The sannyasi said, look, I am a mukta purusha. I am a free man. I don't need ropes to bind anything. So I don't have ropes. So he said, what will I do then? I can't stay awake the whole night because I've got to herd camel the next day morning. So the sannyasi asked him, how do you tie this camel? He said, I do a, and the camel sits down. And then I tie the rope around the camel's neck and I take a piton and I beat it into the ground and I tie the rope around that piton and the camel stays for the night. So the sannyasi said, do similarly. Imaginary rope. You do a click, click, do imagine. So he went there. The camel was standing. He said, a, and the camel sat down. Now he put an imaginary rope around the camel's neck and an imaginary piton was beaten into the ground and the imaginary rope was tied around the piton and he went to sleep because he trusted the sannyasi's words. Next day morning, he got up. The camel was still there. He was very happy. He undid all the other ropes. This camel would not get up in spite of him telling him to get up, get up, get up. The camel would not get up. Jadoo tona ho gaya kidhar to bhi. Problem, some magic has happened. So he ran back to the sannyasi and said, look, some magic has happened. This camel is not getting up, even though it's not tied down. He said, how do you make it get up? I say, I take the piton out like this and I take the rope out from the piton and I take the rope out from the camel and I say, hey, and the camel gets up. He said, do similarly. So he went and did similarly. The camel stood up and he went with the camel. Very instructive story because this is the nature of the mind. This is the nature of the mind. What does it mean? This is the nature of the mind. It means that without our knowledge, the rope was non-existent. Similarly, without our knowledge, the mind which was supposed to be my servant, was supposed to be my instrument, without my knowledge and permission, has gone ahead and become my master and is now using me as its instrument. Think. Can't see the mind, but it is binding us. What does the mind do? What do we mean by saying the mind is binding us? Deepavali just went, right? New Year is coming. Now we have done our yearly medical test and we find blood sugar is slightly on borderline high. Doctor tells you don't eat any sweet stuff. Because your sugar is borderline high, you are at your age, you don't want it to go into high, big problem. So you take a, wow, I'm going to be healthy. I'm not going to eat sweets. And then what happens? Because of COVID lockdown, your mother couldn't come home for Deepavali or New Year. She specially made a special sweet. Only you like it. And she couriered it all the way from her home, the distant town to you. And it came. And then your mother, for good measure, phoned and also asked, स्वीट मिला बेटा, तुम्हारे लिए ही बनाया था. अब भी हमने डिसाइड किया था स्वीट नहीं खाएंगे. अब मन क्या बोलता है? अब मम्मी का दिल कैसे दुखाए. I love that sweet, by the way. I love it. It is my favorite sweet. Mother also knows, I also know. मन क्या बोलता है? मम्मी का दिल दुखा नहीं सकता है. इतना दूर से बेचारी ने भेजा है, एक दिन खा लेते हैं, बाद में नहीं खाएंगे. एक दिन का, 2 दिन का, 3 दिन का, 4 दिन, we polish off the sweet because nobody else likes it. Only I love it. Thank God, only I like it. And we finish it off and we tell Mama, very nice sweet. Come New Year, our friend from distant Calcutta, from our childhood sweet shop, which is still existing, now couriers the next sweet. What will the mind say? नहीं खाओ, नहीं खाओ. So हमको पता है कि नहीं खाना चाहिए, फिर भी खाते हैं. यह है मन. मास्टर, नॉट स्लेव. हम प्रण लेते हैं कि कोविड के टाइम में हम वॉकिंग नहीं कर सकते, हम कल से रोज उठ के योगा करेंगे. जैसे हमारी माता जी करती हैं. She does yoga twice a day, sometimes even thrice a day, I am told. Guruji tells me that. She is very fit like that. तो हम उनसे इंस्पिरेशन लेते हैं और बोलते हैं एक बार तो हम जरूर कल से योगा जल्दी उठ के करेंगे ही करेंगे. During the day it's not possible. I'll get up early tomorrow. And what happens? Just this evening they have released new series on Netflix. Season 2, Season 4, Crown. हाँ, अभी रिलीज हुआ है, सुना है मैंने. मैं देखता नहीं हूँ क्योंकि Netflix का सब्सक्रिप्शन नहीं है मेरे पास, Amazon का है. मन क्या बोलता है? अभी 2 एपिसोड देख के सो जाएंगे, कल जल्दी उठना है. 2 का 4, 4 का 5, 5 का 6, 2 बजे by the time we sleep. Next day morning when the alarm rings at 6 o'clock, 6:30, we snooze it and say कल से योगा करेंगे. कल आता है? नहीं आता है. हमको चाहिए कि हमको एक्सरसाइज करना. We decided that we'll do exercise. Nobody else told us. But the mind decided otherwise. Man proposes, mind dismisses. This is called bondage. हमको मालूम है हमको क्या करना चाहिए, कर नहीं पाते. Mind dismisses. Think. Like that imaginary rope which bound the camel, non-existent, दिखता नहीं है. वैसे ही मन भी दिखता नहीं है, पर हमको बांध के रखा है. हजारों लाखों हैबिट्स में हमको बांध के रखा है. Therefore, mastering the mind becomes very important. So without further ado, let us ask Giri ji why we should master the mind. Over to Giri ji.
Jai Sri Krishna, humble prostrations to all of you Mahatmas and Devis of the call, Sat Sri Akal, prostrations to the lotus feet of Param Pujya Guruji. Thank you Srini ji. Camel. Are we our camels? Are we human beings? Let's try and explore this a little bit. As Srini ji said, the mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. We can be the master of the mind or we can be its slave. It's a choice that we have to make. And the scriptures, which are our guide to living, say that it is better that you are the master of the mind and not its slave. But how do you master something that you can't see? Where is the mind located? Where is it? Is it, I've got this for whatever reason, a blessing that I have to travel a lot. So I end up spending a lot of my time in hotels, planes. It was all pre-COVID time. And even during COVID times, I seem to travel for some reason or the other. The other day I was speaking to somebody and they said, you don't seem to lose this. I've made a trip to London. I moved to Delhi, come back from Delhi. I seem to be on a plane quite regularly. So wherever I go, I ask this question. And if I meet a medical doctor, and I do meet quite a few of them from different, very reputed universities, whether they be from Stanford, Harvard, all these geniuses of the world. And I said to them, look, it's great. Science is really advanced. We have cure for a lot of things. I have a very basic question of you. And I asked them, where is the mind? Why haven't you produced a MRI machine which tells you where the mind is? Because my scripture is telling me that I have to master the mind. And I am in this quest of identifying where this mind is. What's its shape? It seems to control everything that I do. And the invariable answer that I get from these geniuses, these reputed doctors, who run the best universities in the world, is that no, there isn't an MRI machine still that can tell you where the mind is. So we don't know whether that's going to come, not come, don't know, right? And yet the scriptures are telling us that we have to master the mind. Let's forget the scriptures, right? Scripture ko chodo, baat mein dekhe jayega. As Srini said, aaj to sweet kana hai, aaj we have to enjoy pleasures, Netflix, whatever, Amazon, everything. Now COVID has done one thing, and you don't need to lift, you don't need to walk. All you need to have is a phone and an internet connection, and you can live your life, right? Because you can order your food, you can order vegetables, you can watch a movie, entertainment, everything, clothing, everything can be done at the press of a finger button. And if you have a machine which are now common, that's your facial recognition, you don't need to even remember your password or credit card number. Everything, once you set it up, everything, all you need to do is look at the phone. And that's it, everything is done, right? Everything is done. Now, when in such an era, right, how do we, what is this point of controlling the mind? And as I said, forget the scripture. Let's take the worldly pursuit that all of us are involved with. No achievement is possible in this world, they say, without controlling the mind. Arey Baba, I want to be the best sportsman. I want to be the most eloquent speaker. I want to be the best in anything that I do. How am I going to do it without mastering the mind? Absolutely not possible. I'm an avid tennis fan, and there's a series of the last tournament of the year called the ATP Finals is going on just now. That's the last tournament of the year. And last night we had one of the greatest athletes that the world has produced, Rafael Nadal, losing 3 sets. And I watch almost every tennis match that can come or I can get my hands onto, whether it be if it's Rafael Nadal or Roger Federer playing, I will watch it for sure. And I watch with great belief of wanting, what can I learn from them? These two players are they've been playing for 2 decades. Tennis is not a sport that you play for 2 decades, right? People burn out. Likewise, in the corporate world, if you tell people that you work like Srini and I have done for 3 decades, people say, how do you sustain 3 decades of work? Well, we had a purpose. We had a purpose, and therefore 3 decades of work was fun. So these guys constantly are producing the best sport. And how do they do it? So let's take Virat Kohli, a more closer example. Produces, whether he scores in IPL or not, he produces a consistent level of on-field performance. Similarly with MS Dhoni or any great sportsman. Let's take soccer, if that's your favorite sport. What is the secret of success? Similarly, a scientist, similarly a leader. We claim that we're all leaders. What is the success? It is about controlling the mind. A mind that is not controlled is the worst enemy. And no achievement, whether it be in the spiritual field or in the material field, is possible without mastering this mind. That is the first point. So I said so far, mastering the mind is important if you want to achieve anything of importance. 2, this mind, and mastering something which you can't see, which you don't know where it is, and no science can help you to identify where it is. So that's the other challenge that we are faced with. So those very clear points, right? Building on what Srini said. So the choice is ours. Do we want to excel in life? I think all of us want to. Certainly I want to. Not only do I want to excel in the material path in my career in the corporate world, but I also want to excel in the spiritual path. And therefore, what should I need to do? Control the mind. The unseen enemy. See, if you know that somebody is an enemy and they are before you, you know their strength, you try and understand their weakness, you know what to do. Here you're dealing with something which you don't know where it exists, and yet it controls everything that you do. So let's take the simple example and a very practical example of coming to this satsang. So when Vijayaji and Raviji said to me, can you or Sriniji do this topic? We've been working on it. Before coming here, the mind is already contemplating. Similarly for you, the minute you got this notification, you already said, okay, 8 o'clock Bangkok time, I need to be on this call. Therefore, you planned your activities in such a way that 8 o'clock you will be on this call, finish your other activities. What I'm trying to say is anything that you do has already been done in the mind. Therefore, controlling the mind. So I'm setting my raison d'etre for controlling the mind. So anything that we do, whether it be breathing, eating, sleeping, all done in the mind first. Mana eva karana, as Srini said. It has already been done, and therefore it is important to control the mind. That was my first point. And related to that was controlling something which you don't know where it exists, and no MRI can help you to do that. So we are all very clear that controlling the mind is essential, whether it be in the spiritual path or in the material path. The next thing that I wanted to talk about, what is the consequence of not controlling this mind? So we say, and I said this in the warrior to warrior session, attitude determines altitude. Attitude determines altitude. We're all clear? You go to Oxford University, you go and tell them, I want to be a successful person. You go to Harvard University, you go to IIM Ahmedabad, doesn't matter, wherever the best learning institutes are, what do they say to you? Learning is important. You should know your subject, no question. But above that, what is important? Your attitude. Your attitude is important. And where is this attitude of ours? Where is it? Is it in our sleeve? Is it in our hand? Is it in our head? Is it in our nose? Is it in our mouth? It is in our mind. The mind essentially sets out how you look at the world, how you interact with a fellow human being, how you interact with anything else in the world, whether moving or not moving. Is that clear? So I'm saying, after I'm saying it is important to control the mind, I'm saying, moving on further, attitude determines how we look at the world. And where is this attitude? It is in the mind. And this mind determines whether we are going to be successful or not, and by influencing our attitude. It is the lens, though we see that it is the eye, which is through which we see the world, the coloring, the frame of reference, as they will describe in management studies, is provided by the mind. An uncontrolled mind can make you see your best friend as your worst enemy. Why? Your best friend might be telling you, actually, you know what, you didn't do this very well. Right? He is saying that, he or she is saying that in your best interest. If they are your true friend, they would say that to you, that here's some honest feedback. But what does your mind do? Your mind says, he was jealous of me. He did not want me to be successful. And therefore, he is not my best friend. Here, this is what happens. And Sriniji rightfully said, gave the example of Arjuna, the most reputed warrior of his time. And this was a battle for which he was waiting for. He was waiting for this battle. Let's not forget that. Kurukshetra war was something that they were waiting for. And at that moment, he says, his mind says, plays a trick and says, Arjuna, you're not going to fight. So what am I saying? What am I saying? I'm saying it is all a mind game. As Sriniji said, Bhagavad Gita, 700 verses, primarily deal with control of the mind. So I'm adding on to that and saying it is all a mind game. The match between Rafael Nadal and the other person yesterday was a mind game. You win through the mind. That's what we say. That's why you see, I always used to wonder as a child, why would a player say to the opponent that I am confident that I will win? It's the mind. It's playing a mental trick to say that I am going to beat you. The opponent is already losing it. So do you understand where I'm going with it? So the uncontrolled mind can be your worst enemy and is going to cost it is going to impact the way you look at the world. It creates a filtered and a subjective view of the world. Other thing it does, it creates havoc when things don't go according to your view. Right? I said that. Your best friend gives you feedback and you say, no, that can't be right. It creates havoc because the best friend said something which was not in line with your expectation. The third thing it does is it constantly jumps like a monkey between here and there. And one thing that has happened to all of us, and which Srini alluded to, didn't directly refer to this. If you looked at scientific research, 20 years ago, scientific research said multitasking is good for the brain. It's good. So you could be sitting in this call, having your mobile, having a WhatsApp chat with a friend. 20, 30 years ago, they said, yeah, brain is superpower. It can happening so many tasks, etc. Now everybody is saying, no, you focus on what you do. We are not designed for multitasking. Therefore, we need to concentrate. And that the key to concentration lies where? In the mind. Focus. You get focused and you say, I am going to get focused on this conversation. I am going to be here. The mind is saying exactly the opposite. It makes you jump from one tree to the other. Hey, sitting in this call, oh, it's 7 o'clock India time. What's for dinner tonight? Really, you can't wait to find that out for 30 minutes? No, you can't. And then you need to text your wife and say, what's for dinner? Today was Sunday, I was hoping, and she'd respond, and it said, I was hoping to eat biryani. If she said I should make dosa. That's a conversation you have. You think it's parallel. That's what the mind does. Bringing back the mind. If you really want to succeed, and what I'm saying here is, we have a choice. We have plenty of choices. I want all of us, including myself, I speak for myself, not for you, to exercise the choice to be able to control this mind that we cannot see, that to be able to be successful in anything that we do. So I talked about the consequences of the uncontrolled mind. I gave you a couple of examples, right? Starting with the fact that it jumps here and there. It creates a subjective view of the world that we do. And of course, I talked about, it gets very upset when things don't go our way. And the other day I was talking to somebody in London and they said to me, this person is an emotional wreck. Where does that come from? It comes from the mind. Like Arjuna was in the start of the war. Can you believe the strongest warrior, Gandiva? There is no, you can look at scripture other than Karnaya, Bhishma perhaps, Drona. Who was the greatest warrior of the time? Arjuna by a long mile. Not only because of the divine aspect that we had, he had Krishna's support with him. And I will talk about it later. That person was depressed. And where does that stay with us? In the mind. Therefore, dear brothers and sisters, today we will talk about, give you some practical tips, give ourselves some practical tips on how we win over this unseen but biggest enemy that we have, or foe that we have, and turn it to a friend so that it enables our success in anything that we choose to do. With that, I'd ask Srini to cover off a couple of points, particularly on the lens that it creates for us and how it creates havoc when things don't go on to per our view. Over to you, Srini.
Thank you. Thank you, Giri. Beautiful summary there on why master the mind. Thank you. Thank you for that. So I will pick up the first point on how to master the mind, and I will particularly focus on what Giriji talked about, which is how to master the mind when it gives us only subjective views of the world. See, there was an old man who was lying in a hospital bed. He was not well, naturally. He was in the hospital. And he had a bed next to a window. So he used to look out the window and, satisfy himself through the day. But over a period of time, he started to notice that his eyesight was going blurred. So he couldn't see. He was seeing very clearly outside the window. Then he was little blurred, little more blurred. So he started asking the nurse to get an ophthalmologist to him and get something done about his eyes, because he said, I am sick. I came for sickness of my stomach, but I think it's also impacting my eyes. Get an ophthalmologist in. So 2 or 3 days after the nurse heard these complaints from the old man, she called a ward boy and asked him to clean the window. Because what had happened was, the window had acquired some dust and his vision was perfectly all right. It was blurring because of the dust on the window. So like Giriji mentioned, we believe that the eye see. No. The eye sees what the mind thinks. The eye doesn't see what is there. The eye sees what the mind thinks. So I see a form of a lady before me. The mind thinks mother-in-law. Now the eye can only see the mother-in-law. I can no more see a lady. See? It's only the mother-in-law in front of me. Whatever the mother-in-law says now will not be acceptable to me because I don't like her. See, it works like this. If I like you and you throw a stone at me and it hits me here, I will say, what excellent aim. You know, I like you. Excellent aim. First stone you threw, it came, tap, it came and hit. Wow, what aim. If I don't like you and you throw flowers at me, I say, what damn this, you know, throwing flowers like this. Does anybody throw flowers on others like this? Bad manners? No, we'll tell them. Think about it. So do we see what is? The answer is never. We always see what the mind wants us to see. Think about it. We always wanted a car. 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 We were going on a Mumbai, rainy season, big problem, summer, big problem. We always wanted a car. Then we bought a car, Maruti Desire. Very happy. We were calling everybody in our relations one by one, telling them that we bought the car. When we called our brother-in-law, who's our greatest competitor, by the way, because the wife every time says, "Tum bhi na." उसके बाद बहुत महाभारत होता है. तुम भी ना, meaning you also know, meaning you also nothing. You know, 2-bedroom flat you can't buy. Look at brother-in-law, my sister's husband. He has bought 4-bedroom flat and also bungalow in Goa. Tum bhi na. We know what is going to happen after that. So we call that famous brother-in-law, and the brother-in-law says, "Oh, you bought Desire. Oh, very good, very good. I brought my 3rd Mercedes-Benz car." What happened to the happiness of Desire? So happy about Desire. What happened to it? Puss. Think. Does the mind allow us to see the world as it is? Or does the mind make us see the world as it wants you to see it? If worldly success is measured by a 4-bedroom apartment, the mind will make you see your perfectly adequate 2-bedroom apartment as too small. Before COVID, by the way. Once you're in COVID and your mate doesn't come, I got a 4-bedroom apartment. I am the person who does jhadu pocha at home. Okay. That is deputed to me. So I can tell you, I constantly curse the decision of buying a 4-bedroom apartment. Takes 45 minutes to do jhadu and pocha. Yeah, I don't have a robot to do it. I do it myself. So perfectly adequate 2-bedroom apartment, the mind makes us believe we are an also-ran, we are not at all successful because my brother-in-law has a 4-bedroom apartment. It's adequate for me, for my family, but the mind will not allow me to rest. Think. So what is this coloring on mind? The coloring on this mind is called raga dvesha. Likes and dislikes. That is the coloring on the mind. Raga and dvesha. That is the coloring on the mind. Once I understand that, once I realize that I never see the world as it is, I always see it through a lens called raga dvesha, likes and dislikes. So I can never be objective in my view of the world. Think about it. If I cannot be objective about my view of the world, then many a times the mind is making me take wrong decisions. Because what I believe to be success, not objective, subjective. Who I believe to be a good person for me, not objective, subjective. Just like Giriji said, friend gives advice, I don't like it, therefore the mind interprets that advice to say, this friend is jealous of me, therefore he is saying those things. The advice was perfectly legitimate. The mind didn't allow us to see it like that. So in the first topic of how to control the mind, the first principle that we have to agree to is that we never see the world as is. We only see the world in the way the mind dictates it so. In the way the mind dictates it to be so. That's the way we see the world. And what is that lens through which the mind sees the world? Likes and dislikes. So what I have to do? I have to work on reducing my likes and dislikes. I'm not going to cover how to remove likes and dislikes. We'll have to be here for the next 3 hours. Like I said, 650 verses of the Bhagavad Gita cannot be covered in a 30-minute talk. Not possible. But if we even make the first step to accept that I never see the world objectively, I see the world only subjectively, that subjective lens is likes and dislikes, 50% of the battle is won. That's all I need to do. Because suddenly I will have more ability to look at choices in the way I want to see the world. So that is the first point I want to make. The second point which I'll pick up from Giriji is the fact that the mind creates havoc when we don't get what we want. There was this king whose minister had this irritating habit of saying whatever happens, happens for the good. Every time he will say that. So one day the king, in a hunting accident, actually his finger got cut. He got cut here. Not cut as in cut. It got cut, finished. The finger was gone. The minister immediately, as per his habit, said, whatever happens, happens for the good. The king got bloody annoyed because he was already in pain. And he got very annoyed and he said, how dare you say when my finger is gone that everything happens for the good? Throw him in jail, he said. So he was thrown in jail. The king's wound healed. The minister was in jail. Very soon, the king, very interested in hunting, went for another hunting trip with his army. Usually, the minister will always go. This time, minister was in jail. So, king went with his other people. Inside, he was chasing a deer and he separated himself from the army, got lost inside the forest, got captured by a batch of tribals in the forest who were looking for somebody to do as Narabali, human sacrifice for their goddess. Took him to their doctor, witch doctor, and he examined the king and he said, sorry, you can't give Narabali of this person because this person lacks one finger. He's not complete. Release him, he said. So the king was released and Thakahara, after much effort, he came back to the palace. The first thing he did was, he said, release the minister, bring him back here. So he told the minister the whole story and said, when you said everything happens for the good, I did not believe you. Now I do. But he said, you still owe me an answer. What about your being in jail? He said, that is also for the good only, Maharaj, he said. He said, how? He said, otherwise I would have been with you on the hunting trip. I would have never let go sight of you. I would have been with you. They would have caught both of us. They would have released you. But I am whole, no. They would have finished me off. I got saved, he said. Think. It's a very simple story, but a very deep story as well. Many a times we have seen in our lives that what we believe to be a wrong turn in our life. We wanted X college, we got Y college. We wanted that degree, we got another degree. 10 years, 15 years later, we look back and say, wo to theek hi hua. That was okay actually. It was a good thing that happened. We wanted to go to X city. I know of people who stayed in Singapore and then they had to be transferred to Bombay. They were extremely upset. By the time they stayed 4 or 5 years in Bombay and they had to go back to Singapore, they were extremely upset again because they had come to love Bombay. So the second practice point that I will leave with you is, can we refrain from judging on an immediate basis whatever is happening to us? Can we hold off judgment for some time? For some things, maybe a day. For some things, maybe a week. For some things, maybe a month. There is an inevitable turn and undoable. You can't undo it. That time turn has happened in life. Can we refrain from judging it immediately? That's all we have to do. Very, very difficult, mind you. Because the mind is used to passing snap judgments. Shakl se to chor nazar aata hai. You know, that Amitabh Bachchan song is that. Shakl se to chor nazar aata hai. That song is there, Amitabh Bachchan se, yeah? In Namak Haram. Arey, shakl se chor nazar aaya aapko. Snap judgment. So if we want to live a life where we have mastered the mind, can we put ourselves in a position where we evaluate the impact of an incident after some time? That day, if I felt bad, let me feel bad for that day. That is fine. But next day, can I say to myself, whether bad or good, we'll evaluate later. Think. See, it is disaster that strikes sometimes. Like the industrialist's father died. Young son studying overseas had to come back and assume charge of the entire enterprise without having any background, very little background in it. But what happened? That young industrialist, now you know his name, he grew the industry which his father had left him to a mega corp, manifold times the size of his father, and is now renowned in his own right as a great industrialist. Seems like that father's expiry was a very unfortunate event. But that turn in life brought a strength of character to that person that made that person who he is today. Think. So whether it be adversity, which strengthens the sinews of character inside us, very difficult to accept it, but it is true, or it be gains, which propels our life forward. Can we stop judging both of them for a while? I know of a time when I got promoted, I was very happy till I found out who was to be my boss. I hated those 2-3 years of that promotion. We were a crap person to deal with. All the time he was angry. So I went and asked Guruji what to do. Guruji said, your favorite Devata, Ishta Devata is Narsimha. He said, just think of your boss as Narsimha. Sab theek ho jayega, he said. So inside gain can be adversity. Inside adversity, there can be gain. Can we stop judgment? So 2 points I leave you with before I hand back to Giriji. Point number 1 is that we put ourselves in a position where we judge events later, not immediately. Even if I feel bad or good now, I say I will suspend judgment and decide later on what the event actually did for me. And number 2, can I appreciate that my view of the world is not objective, it is subjective, and that subjectivity is colored by likes and dislikes. Those are the 2 practice points I'll leave with you and hand back to Giriji for further talking on how to control the mind.
So thank you. Thank you, Srini. As Srini beautifully pointed out, so if you look at, if it's a friend, then, if we like the person, even if they harm us, we say there's nothing of how nicely they harmed us. Don't like the person, the mind is colored that, then even the good deed done looks like it's a harm. So that's who plays that trick? It's this unseen friend of ours. I say friend because I want it to be my friend. It's that unseen friend of ours which causes havoc. I said it causes havoc, jumps here and there. Of course it does. Sitting in the satsang, we're thinking about, when is our next meal? What are we going to eat? What Monday morning, what are we going to do? Which boss are we going to see first thing? What's the first call? So it does create havoc in many, many different respects. But this 10 minutes I want to use, 10 minutes I want to use to talk about how do we control the mind and leave us with some practical tips in addition to the 2 points that Srini talked about. This unseen friend of ours has got 60,000 thoughts, say the best selves. Every day there are 60,000 thoughts that go through our mind. This is science now. I will come to Krishna, of course, in a bit. So 60,000 thoughts, out of which 58,000 thoughts are repeat thoughts. 58,000 thoughts are repeat thoughts, i.e. thoughts which we've always thought about: eating, wearing clothes, going to sleep, all about I, me, myself generally, okay? 58,000 thoughts are repeat thoughts. So how are we going to make these thoughts noble? How are we going to make these thoughts more friendly towards us? So many practical tips are possible. 1, start a new habit of mastering the mind today. Saying to yourself that I am going to be the master of my mind. Therefore, I'm going to do number one, sit still for 2 minutes every day. It's not limited to once. It could be 3 times, as Srini said. Doing yoga need not be limited to once a day. If you have time, do it more. So, 2 minutes of silence in the morning, 2 minutes of silence in the afternoon, 2 minutes of silence in the evening. Try this, and on this alone, I can say I've tried it. And it is the first 2 minutes are the most difficult 2 minutes. It's at that time when your thoughts will hit you at Mach 1 speed, those 60,000 thoughts. Is the wife safe? Is the child going to school well? Did I put milk on the gas stove? Did I switch off the gas stove? Did I turn off the lamp? All thoughts hit you at Mach 1 speed. You will fail. There's one good use of the mobile phone, which is to use a timer. Set the timer. One good use. Set the timer for 2 minutes. After 2 minutes, it will say, repeat, and I immediately say yes. Those 2 minutes are bliss. Because what happened by now, those Mach 2, Mach 1 thoughts that hit me, the thoughts that hit me at Mach 1 speed, I've told them, I don't want you, not you, go away. So I'm calm and able to concentrate on what I needed to do. Slowly but surely build this habit for 21 days. It's like skiing. You build skiing, you build gradual momentum. 2 minutes, start with 2 minutes, slowly increase the pace. I can tell you, the days I have done this in the morning before I go to work, my secretary tells me, and a lot of people used to tell me that I used to work with, tell me, you're very calm today. It is truth, it is satya. The day you sat with yourself, calm the mind and go calm, you are Shanti Swarupa. Otherwise, as Srini said, you're nursing avatar. You make a choice, what you want, how others want to see you. You want to be Kadus, you want to be tension party, or you want to be Mr. Calm, Mr. Dhoni, Captain Cool, right? Never get offended. Or Roger Federer. You've seen Federer get upset about anything. It's okay. Calm, Rolls Royce, that is why he is what he is. So that's a choice we want to make. Number one habit, calm the mind, 2 minutes of meditation, as many times as you can do daily. The bestsellers say that if you want to create a new habit, you do it for 21 days consecutively. Don't tell me, oh, Giriji, you said 21 days, I'll do it over 21 days over 1 year. No, nothing will change. 21 consecutive days. Simple. Can we do that for ourselves? Yes, we can do that. Number one. Number two, the next time you've got the urge to see your mobile, tell yourself that there are 2 hour intervals that you want to check your mobile. 1 hour interval, 2 hour intervals. This is our biggest addiction. Things have come to us free, whether it be social media, Facebook. I need to put everything on Facebook. Whatever I eat, whatever I talk, whatever I do, everything is pictured. And in our satsang, I was talking to my child the other day, and she said, can you show me some pictures of my childhood? Right? This is a 14-year-old. And for my son, we had some pictures. I said, look, I didn't take any pictures. And she said, well, what about Diwali last year? Do you have any pictures? I said, no, we didn't take pictures. It's just not in my DNA to take pictures. I'm not on social media. I deliberately made a choice that I don't want to be on social media, simply because I find that it's a way to create jealousy, as Srini said. You say, I bought a Desire, somebody will say, I bought a Mercedes, and that too, they won't say, and I bought my Mercedes. God's grace has been really, I have tears in my eyes because God blessed me with 3 Mercedes Benz. What you're actually telling the other person, hey, I got 3 Mercedes. This is what we are doing. And so stay away. Tell yourself that you will stay away from phone. I use the example of phone and broaden it to social media for limited chunks of time during the day. Be 1 hour, be 2 hours, whatever works for you, right? I'm just giving the 1 hour, 2 hour example for myself. All whatever I'm saying on this conversation is something that I am practicing. I'm not a master of it by any stretch of imagination. Practicing it like a student, like yourself, and I'm just sharing my thoughts. The next thing I would suggest we do is to do a spiritual audit every night as we go through this. Did I control, was the mind my best friend or my worst enemy today? As you lie down, go through that spiritual audit and say, this is good. Okay? Those are 3 points. Now, this, as Srini started by saying, this topic is covered extensively in the Gita. Therefore, it would be remiss of Srini and I not to cover, at least for a couple of minutes, on what a very relevant question on this, the Gita is. There are many questions, as Srini said, on this topic, but we'll take the most relevant and most direct question. Before that, the Bhagavad Gita is the primordial text of mankind. Please remember this. Please do not think Indian history is 200 years old and it dates to the Mughal invasion. No. Indian history is many, many centuries old, many, many millennium old. And the Bhagavad Gita was given to mankind by Lord Krishna, Narayana himself, to the representative man who is Arjuna. Arjuna asks all the questions. The reading of the Bhagavad Gita will tell you that it has all the questions that you and I can potentially ask the Lord for. And I was in Oxford University learning leadership, and they said, Giri's got answers to this question. Giri will probably know this. And they said, well, this is covered in the Bhagavad Gita, isn't it? It is called, the book is called Eastern Answers to Western Problems. They refer to that. But we don't want to refer to the Bhagavad Gita. We feel, what is there in Gita? 5,000 year old. So let's come directly to the question. So Arjuna is telling Krishna now, in the 6th chapter, hey Krishna, whatever you say makes lovely sense, beautiful sense, absolutely agree. Of course, he's the master of logic. Why would he not make sense? But he says, I have one problem, Krishna. I have one problem. And what is that problem? He says, Arjuna says in the 6th chapter, Chanchalam hi manasi Krishna. My mind, that is faster. When I say Chanchal, Chanchalam hi manasi Krishna, don't go to the Chanchal ka Chitwan. Don't be reminded of that song, that old song. No, I'm not talking about that song. I'm talking about Arjuna's question. Arjuna is saying, my mind is faster than the wind, and how do you expect me to control this, Krishna? Something is faster than wind, how am I going to control it? And there, Krishna says, I agree, it is difficult, but possible. Lord gives us a way to answer questions. And he says, it is difficult, but possible. You do two things, Arjuna, to control the mind. And what are those two things that the Lord sets out? Two things that are abhyasa. Abhyasa equal to practice or discipline. And vairagya equal to dispassion. Two things, very simple. Just two things, Abhyasa and vairagya. Abhyasa, discipline, as I said, Roger Federer, the world's greatest tennis player, or Rafael Nadal, one of the greatest athletes, very disciplined about what they eat, very disciplined about how many hours of sleep they get, very disciplined about how they spend their time. T-I-M-E, time. If you waste time, time will waste you. That's what we say in the satsang. So that's the piece that I want to cover. So Krishna is saying, you do two things, you will control the mind. One, be disciplined. That's the key to success. Two, be dispassionate. Why be dispassionate? What is that meaning? It was covered, alluded to in earlier topics, which is to say that ultimately nothing is permanent. Don't get too fussed about everything. It's okay. So as Srini said, it's not possible to cover this topic in a lot more of depth. So please take away two things. What do we need to do to control the mind? Abhyasa equal to discipline. And two is dispassion, i.e. not get too attached to anything. Those two, if you do, we can do that. And now I said the mind has got 60,000 thoughts and we don't even know where it is. How are we going to control it? We're going to control it, as I said, to two things, abhyasa and vairagya. There's a third element that I want all of us to follow. What is the third element? This mind is not seen, yet it's so powerful. And who is the mind? The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita, Indriyani manasasatmi. Among the Indriyas, that is the organs, I am the mind, he says. I am the mind. How can we control the mind? Therefore, partnership with the divine flute player of Vrindavan and Guruvayur, Shri Krishna, is essential to be able to control the mind. He is our partner, he is our sarathi. He is willing to walk in front of us. All we need to do is call him and say, I am trying sincerely to control my mind. I need your grace to be able to control this mind of mine, which is faster than the wind. Chanchalamhi manasi Krishna. And if we do our bit, which is to do the two things that we said, abhyasa, discipline, and vairagya. Discipline is what that 2-minute meditation is. Discipline is what the staying away from social media for limited chunks of time is. Discipline is what not eating that sweet that Srini talked about. Discipline is what reducing our likes and dislikes. All of that we covered so far is covered under that headline of discipline. And Vairagya equal to dispassion, i.e. taking a view that nothing is permanent, not getting too attached. Some attachment, okay, not getting too attached or too set in our ways. And thirdly, praying to the Lord for His grace. If we did the first two, the grace will follow. Man's duty is to pray, Lord's duty is to give grace. He will do that. We don't need to remind Him, He will automatically do it. So the 24-hour toll-free helpline of Krishna that is there for us need to be called upon to be able to control the mind. As Srini said, this topic is a very wide topic. We try to do a little bit of justice in the available 50 minutes. So before I pass over to Srini, what did I say? I gave some practical tips on controlling the mind. Some, not exhaustive. By setting out that there are 60,000 thoughts, 58,000 thoughts of which are repeated thoughts. Everything that we do has been already done in the mind. Therefore, our thoughts are actions. Therefore, pure thoughts are required. Then I said some practical tips of slowing down, 2-minute meditation, frequent meditation during the day, sitting there, staying away from distractions such as social media. Then I talked about the representative man's question and the single answer that the Gita gives, which is Abhyasa and Vairagya that the Gita says. And added to that with a sprinkling of prayer to the Lord that He partners with us or He be our Sarathi in this journey to control the mind. Srini, with that I'll stop and hand it over to you. Thank you.
I was thinking I would do a summary, but I can't do a better summary than what Giriji has already done. So I don't want to improve on it. So I'll just pass the mic back to Raviji and Vijayaji for taking any questions.
Thank you, Sriniji. There is a couple of questions here. One which has come. Before we take the question, we have Papniji, who has been kind enough to give us this platform. Parmarth and Adhyatmikta has joined us. Welcome, Papniji.
Jai Shri Krishna. Namaste ji. Sat Shri Akal.
Jai Shri Krishna. We are in the Q&A. We are in the Q&A stage, and probably we will connect with you shortly as we complete. But glad to have you join us.
Thank you. Okay, continue. Yes.
So we have one question here, Sriniji, which is being displayed in front of you. Which is, I'll read it for you. Visualize, okay.
Yeah, I've read it. Yeah. How to convince the mind to be, to stay stable, what is seeing and what I want to see. Yes, look, there was this boy who was always fighting with his sister because the sister said, God will do everything for me. God will do everything for me. So the boy was very annoyed with his little sister. Little sister had a teddy bear. So the boy just tore the hand of the teddy bear and the girl started wailing. So he said, now ask your God to fix it. And he stormed out of the house. And he came back after some time and he found the girl was composed. His little sister was composed and yet the teddy bear's arm had not been fixed. So he asked, what happened? Your God didn't do the help for you. She said, no, I asked God. And God said, this time the answer is no. Think, right? Our view is that whenever we ask, we want the answer to be yes only. The Lord of the universe, who is running this whole universe, Earth, itna bada Earth ko without pole khada kiya hai. Without khamba, Earth is standing. Without any dashing between planets, they are moving at great velocity. The Earth itself is rotating at great speed. Your chai doesn't shake in the cup. Solar eclipses and lunar eclipses happen at the precise hour, minute, second, millisecond. इतना perfect दुनिया चलाता है भगवान, उसको हम advice देते हैं कि हमारा छोटा सा दुनिया को आप कैसा चलाना चाहिए. Not possible. Therefore, Guruji says, अगर जो हमने मांगा वो हुआ तो एक नमस्कार, अगर हमने मांगा और वो नहीं हुआ तो दो नमस्कार. क्यों? अभी भगवान जो चाहते हैं वो हुआ. Think. Now you might think that we might think that that is a cop out and that's a sort of, we're just given up on it. No, I'm not saying don't give up effort. Do the effort required. If you need to try again, try again. But the prayer to the Lord cannot be, do what I want. No, the prayer to the Lord should be, this is my desire. If it is right for me, let it take place. Because I don't know what is right for me and what is wrong for me. मैं अल्प बुद्धिमान हूं. I am not able to visualize my future. So if it is right for me, let it happen. If it is wrong for me, put lot of badhas in the way, let it not take place. That should be our prayer. Then if we visualize like that, then you will find a lot of the visualizations take place as we want it to. In life, if you think about it for a nanosecond, if we think about life, one more perspective and I'll stop. If we think about life, we will find that we are getting what we desire 99.9999% of the time. Now you might say, sir, आपका जीवन का बात करो आप तो बहुत successful होंगे उसके लिए 99.9999 बोल रहे हैं. But I will prove to you that 99.9999% of the times, all of us are getting as expected or better than expected result. When I opened my eyes in the morning, what was my expectation? That I would see. Did I see? Answer is yes. When I drank tea in the morning, what was my expectation? Not that it should be garam, that it should go through my food pipe, not my windpipe. Did it go through the food pipe? Yes, sir. Once it went through the food pipe into my stomach, what was my expectation? It should get digested. Did it get digested? Yes, sir. हवा बाहर जाती है. क्या एक्सपेक्टेशन है? अंदर आना मनता है, वो गाना नहीं मनता है. अच्छा तो हम चलते हैं, ऐसा बोल के चला जाएगा तो बिग प्रॉब्लम. नहीं चलता है बट वापस आता है वो हवा. वही हमारा एक्सपेक्टेशन है. हार्ट बीट होना मनता है, लब डब लब डब लब डब लब डब लब डब लब डब सेम रेट पे होना मनता है. हार्ट बोलता है बहुत बोरिंग है, लब डब लब डब. हम एक दिन करेगा लब डब 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 डब, एक दिन करेगा लब, थोड़ा देर रुकेगा फिर डब, थोड़ा देर रुकेगा फिर लब, सीधा आईसीसीयू, स्ट्रेट अवे टू आईसीयू. नहीं, आईसीसीयू में लेके जाएंगे आपको. थिंक, are these not our expectations? Are these not getting fulfilled? The answer is yes, they are getting fulfilled. Otherwise, you will not be in this satsang. You will be running after some doctor. 99.9999% of the time, what we expect happens. But the mind, unfortunately, focuses on that which is not happening and then says, हमने जो चाहा नहीं हो रहा है. Gratitude journal, जो हमने live to laugh में बात किया था, अगर आपने स्टार्ट किया हो, अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमको याद रहता है, बूढ़ा हूं फिर भी याद रहता है ये सब. अगर आपने स्टार्ट किया हो, बहुत फायदे का रहेगा. सो स्टॉप दैट.
Srini ji, let me ask you one thing. In English, there is only brain or mind has only one word. Brain is an organ and mind is a manifestation of thought perception. Whereas in spirituality, the mind is divided into 4 parts. Would you just elaborate on that? Because there is a relevant question which has been asked here. What is the role of intellect?
It is called Antakarana, Man, Buddhi, Chitta or Ahankar. These are the 4 parts. Man is mind, Buddhi is intellect, Chitta is mind stuff, memory stuff, Ahankar is ego. इसको हम अंतःकरण कहते हैं. अंतःकरण के 4 भाग होते हैं. These are the 4 parts of the अंतःकरण. The mind is the one which has emotions. It has no capability to think of right and wrong. It just wants or does not want. It likes or dislikes. It is the intellect which is supposed to sit on top of the mind and make judgment calls. Discrimination is in the intellect, not in the mind. That is why spirituality divided mind and intellect. Discriminating intellect, wanting mind. The senses are controlled by the mind by the intellect, and the intellect is informed by the guru or adhyatmic knowledge. Then life goes on very nicely. But जैसा कि मैंने आपको कहा, मन जो हमारा सर्वेंट होना चाहिए था, मास्टर बन के बैठा है विदाउट परमिशन. सो इंटेलेक्ट को भी बाजू में करता है वो. इंटेलेक्ट ने हमको कहा कल से एक्सरसाइज करेंगे, मन ने कहा चुप बैठ सोना है. इंटेलेक्ट ने हमको कहा स्वीट खाएगा तो डेंजर है, डायबिटीज आएगा. मन ने बोला चुप बैठ, अभी के लिए खाते हैं. इंटेलेक्ट ने हमको कहा जो फ्रेंड कह रहा है सही है, मन ने कहा चुप बैठ, वो जेलस है हमसे. So our intellect has also been captured by the mind. Instead of the mind being controlled by the intellect is being controlled by the mind. I'll pause there.
Srini, just a follow up on that. You talked about Antakarna. Then what is Antakarna Shuddhi means?
Antakarna Shuddhi means nothing but the informing of the intellect with Adhyatmic Gyan. That's all it means. We are informing the intellect with worldly Gyan over and over again. हर worldly चीज के बारे में हमको ज्ञान है, हमारे बारे में हमको ज्ञान नहीं है. We don't have ज्ञान about ourselves. पूरा दुनिया को जाना, खुद को नहीं जाना, फिर क्या जाना? Think. और स्वयं को जानने का कोई तरीका नहीं है. There is no way you can know yourself by being in the world, because the world has no capability to inform you about yourself. That can only come from Adhyatma. So Antakarna Shuddhi means washing of the intellect with Adhyatmic Gyan. But remember that washing should be in torrents. एक बकेट है स्टील का जो टैप के नीचे फिक्स्ड है, सीमेंटेड है वो बकेट में गंदा पानी है, वो गंदा पानी को आपको निकालना है. हाउ यू विल टेक आउट? यू विल ओपन द टैप फुल एंड लेट द वाटर फ्लो, ग्रेट गश. That water will fill the bucket will overflow. Lot of water will overflow. Ultimately, after some time, clean water will be left in the bucket. Very wasteful exercise. But that is the only way to clean that bucket of water. Lot of water will be wasted. Like that, इस intellect, fixed mind, जिसमें अंदर गंदगी है, likes and dislikes का, ज्ञान का गंगा बहना चाहिए. That is the idea with which Shiva is represented as getting Ganga in, torrential Ganga in, letting out a small trickle out. Think, allegory देखो उधर. तो ज्ञान का गंगा बहना चाहिए ताकि सारा डर्ट बाहर निकल जावे और सिर्फ शुद्ध अंतःकरण बचे, which is fully informed by Adhyatma.
Thank you, Sriniji. Interest of time, only one last question for you. I'll move on to Giriji. You talked about in this session today that we are all binded by our ragas and dveshas. Are we born with them or we collect them during our process?
No, sir. We grow them like ours. They are more loving. They are our more loved children than even our own children. हमने उनको पाल पोस के बड़ा किया है. हमने किया है बड़ा उनको पाल पोस के. ये वर्ल्ड में अगर हम कुछ अपना करके कह सकते हैं, आप बोलिए मेरा पैसा अपना है, पीछे से बेटा बोलता है पापा मैं हूं. आप बोलिए बीवी मेरी है, बीवी बोलती है क्या मैं प्रॉपर्टी हूं आपकी? नहीं हूं बोलती है. सोचिए, think about anything you can say मेरा है, and there will be somebody standing there telling you नहीं है ये आपका. सिर्फ एक चीज आप कह सकते हैं मेरा है, और कोई चाहता नहीं उसको. क्या है? मेरा अहंकार और उससे जुड़ा हुआ राग द्वेष. आप देके देखो किसी को, मेरा अहंकार और राग द्वेष ले लो प्लीज. किसी को नहीं चाहिए, सिर्फ गुरु लेगा. Only the guru will take it from you. Nobody else will. ये unwanted item है. हमने पाल पोस के बड़ा किया है.
Thank you, Sriniji. Giriji, Sriniji is talking about Guru. We'll go there and know more about Jivanmuktas and Guruji. Just one couple of questions to you, Giriji. You talked about mastering the mind like sportsmen. You talked about Roger Federer, Rafael Nadal. Is it akin to being in the moment or being in the now?
Absolutely. Mastering the mind requires us to also focus on the now. Clearly, it's related. It is one of the things that you will do once you've mastered the mind. The mind has got a tendency to do two things. A, go into the past, which is what we call as regrets, or what would I have done differently, which we all know that we can't do anything about. The second thing is worry about the future, without realizing that the real thing that we can do about the future is do our actions well today so that the future pans out perhaps like what we want, rather than worry about the future itself. So those are two things. Big point about discipline is learning to live in the present. So I wouldn't say the sportsman lives today, but obviously he does. He will need to. If you're Rafael Nadal, there's a great example that I give all the time. 2017 Australian Open. Roger Federer's got a very poor record against Rafael Nadal. Took a break for 6 months from sport injury and comes to the final of Australian Open. Who does he meet? His nemesis, Rafael Nadal. Down a set, comes back to win a 5-setter classic. I was thinking, what a mind game this must have been, to tell himself, I can do it. Any other person, I bet 6.9999 billion people would have given up in that match. Here he was saying, I am going to win. I am going to win. Similarly, I would have said of Djokovic playing Wimbledon against Roger Federer and winning in 5 sets. In the 4th set, Roger Federer had the match. He was playing for the match. Did Djokovic defend it? He did. And he went to the 5th set, and it was a record long set, one of the classics. Watch these not just for fun and seeing how they stroke each other, how physically it's done. It's a mind game. It's completely got to do with only one thing: power of one person's mind over the other. It's of discipline.
Thank you, Giriji. One last couple of questions. One question I will ask, and then I'll ask Vijayaji to go ahead with her question. Can thinking and non-thinking be controlled by our will?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Without a doubt. 2 minutes, try it. I speak with authority on this one. Absolutely. The first 2 minutes, smack one's feet, all kinds of thought. What tie do you wear? What's the first meeting? Who's going to say what? You're going to do this, blah, blah, blah. Second meeting, when you press, you can say repeat timer, completely clear. So, it's possible. Thinking and non-thinking, 200% in our control.
Vijayaji, over to you.
Yeah, this is a related question to that, Giriji, Jai Shri Krishna.
Yes.
If I really have the control, then you said out of 60,000 thoughts, 58 are repeated thoughts.
Yeah.
So how do I work to reduce that repeated?
Power of habit. 21 days, say that you don't want to think, not this, not this, not this, not worry. We don't relate fear, spirituality and fear. If you're a true bhakta, if you're truly on the path and knowing you're on the path, a bhakta is one who is fearless. And what is our fear about? It's about our children, about our future, about our health. A bhakta is one who does not have any fear. So tell yourself that I have no worries about the future. I have no worries about the past. I am here to live in the now. And I do not want these silly thoughts. Yeah, you can't reduce 60,000 thoughts. That's the nature of mind. But turn it into noble thoughts. Turn it into thoughts about the Lord. Turn it about Desh and Dharma, wherever you are. Right? Hopefully I've answered the question, Mata Vijay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Giriji. Giriji, would you just take us through Jivanmuktas and talk a little bit of Param Puja Guruji, and then we go on to hear from Papni Thakurji how the last a few sessions has been.
Thank you. I will take 2-3 minutes if I may. Is that all right, Raviji?
Yes.
So our satsang was started on Makar Sankranti Day, 14th of January, 1981 in Bahrain, country called Bahrain in the Middle East, by our Param Puja Guruji, Shantaram Bhandarkar Maharaj. Guruji was born in Bahrain. Like all of us, like the majority of us in this call, he's a householder. He is married and he's a father of 3 children. So the origin of the satsang was that he hails from Udupi, and a group of people from Udupi would meet regularly and socialize. And one other person, Chandavarkarji and Guruji, decided that instead of meeting socially, could we not think about our scriptures and learn lessons from the scriptures? So the satsang was started. The primary focus was on reading and understanding the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and Srimad Bhagavatam. As time went on and scriptures were expanded, we read, and Guruji teaches us Viveka Chudamani, Panchadasi, and very advanced scriptures such as these. And we grew. Primarily between 81 and 95, it was Bahrain focused. In 1996, one of the satsangis who was in Bahrain, who brought me and my spouse Shanti into the satsang, moved to Australia, and that was our first chapter overseas. And Venuji, whom you all heard speak about Bhakti in Namasparana, a great devotee of the Lord, he started the satsang in Belgium, in Dubai, and other places. Later on, some of us moved, started the satsang in Asia, Singapore, Indonesia, Bangkok, and satsang has grown. Prashantji in between started the satsang in the US. So today we have a satsang from Australia to the US. When we started the satsang in Asia, we didn't have a name. People used to ask us, what's the name of your satsang? And we'd say, satsang is called Bahrain satsang. But when we started the satsang in the US, we realized that we do need a name, because there were Chinya Mission, there was Art of Living, there was this or that. And people asked us, what is your name of the satsang? So then we said, we asked Guruji and we named ourselves as Jivanmuktas. What do we really do? It's about ourselves and our journey on the path of the spiritual path, mukti or liberation, which is the highest goal for a human being. The Gita says that we've all had many births, and we are striving towards liberation. And to get the form of a human being is rare, and out of those rare people, one perchance will get liberated. We are walking towards that path. Our satsang has grown over the last 40 years, and there are three pillars of the satsang. What are the three pillars? They are Seva, Dana, and Swadhyaya. Right? Swadhyaya, introspection, your own learning, your own journey. Dana is giving away 1/10 of our earnings. The scriptures say, he is verily a thief who does not share his prosperity with others. What is Seva? Guruji believes that we need a noble world, and our Seva is directed towards making ourselves as well as people around us noble. What do? We have distributed 1 crore copies of the Bhagavad Gita absolutely free in India as well as in Asia, a small quantity in Indonesia, in Bahasa Indonesia. Then we have a Gurukul where we take children from absolutely poorest of rural backgrounds. When I say poorest of rural background, I mean the annual income of these children's parents is 60,000 rupees. I'm not talking about daily income or monthly income or weekly income. I'm talking about annual income being 60,000 Indian rupees, which is about $800, right? Annual income. We've taken those children and we have our own Gurukul. We are teaching them value-based education in Nivritti Gurukul. In addition to that, we have 10 million students benefited from amazing empowerment workshops, a small workshop content of 3 hours. I have to tell you this, having been through some of the best leadership training institutes in the world, I feel that our workshop, which is delivered by our own volunteers in 3 hours, wins head and shoulder above anything that I learn in these institutes over 5 days, which is the duration of a typical leadership development program. So that's really what we do. As I said, our Param Puja Guruji's photograph you see. Whatever I am today and my spouse is, and I'm sure the same for Srini and others on the other satsangis on the call, is purely because of what the Guru has taught us. I have been blessed to be with the Guru for well over 25 years now. And what would I say in one word? I've never seen Guruji ask me to do something that he's not experimented on himself. That's what attracted me. Because I had a feeling that some of the masters that I've seen in the past, they were wearing ochre robes, they're renunciates, etc. But they're not gone through the pain of living in a family, having children, having a wife, and yet be non-attached. Our Guru, as I said to you, has done all of that, and he gives us unconditional love, as the slide says. The mind that we talked about today divides if it's not your best friend. But if it's your best friend, then it partners with the heart to unite. That's how I would describe what we do. Nobility in action is how we describe ourselves. I think I've come to the end of that 3 minutes that I asked for. Srini, do you want to add anything before we pass on to Raviji, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I will just add 30 seconds worth of advertisement break. I have seen many people say here it's a superb session, very enlightening, and I've seen those comments come through even for other sessions. Look, this is just 5 sessions or 6 sessions that we have done with you. I can guarantee you only one thing about these sessions, and that is by next week you would have forgotten all about them. I'm under no illusions that you'll remember them and do, because that's the nature of the mind. Mind is like a scene. Everything will drop through, and after 1 week, if you ask, "Kya baat kiya inhone 5 session mein?" you'll just be able to remember some jokes and some stories, but after that, nothing else, right? So I would urge you that if this has proved interesting to you, this is what spirituality is about. If this has proved interesting to you, reach out via Papni ji to Ravi ji and Vijaya ji. We can, if you so desire, set up a bespoke session or a couple of sessions if there are enough participants for people to continue on this journey with a frequency as you desire. You want a weekly session, we can set one up. You want a monthly session, we can set one up. But if there is no continuity of sessions, then what is learned here, the joy that you felt on listening, the aha moments that you enjoyed out of listening to this, will, I guarantee you, be forgotten in 2-3 weeks' time, completely dissipate. So don't allow it to dissipate. The only request I have of you is, we are not interested in numbers. The only reason why I say that is, both I, Giriji, Vijayaji, Raviji, and all the satsangis who are on this call, I've seen magnificent benefits of this satsang in our daily life. In every aspect of our life, we have seen magnificent benefits. And we are eager that you too get those same magnificent benefits. It will be completely free. There is no charge for registration, nothing. We never charge anything for anything. It will be free, permanently free. Right? It's not like you get free and then we say if you want pro, then you pay money. Permanently free. That's a guarantee we have for you. So if you want to join, reach out to any of these people who make these sessions happen. Thanks to the organizers. Back to Ravi.
Thank you, Sriniji. In fact, Papniji has shared the number of the gentleman who is connecting to us from Spain all the way. Over to you, Papniji, to a few words, and thank you for giving us this opportunity to host us in your channel, Parmat and Adhyatmikta. And please, a few words before we thank you.
Namaste, Mahatma Giridhar ji, Mahatma Srini ji, Mahatma Ravi ji, and Mata Vijaya ji. जब आपसे मेरी पहली मुलाकात हुई 2 साल पहले, तब आपने कहा था कि भाई ये प्रोग्राम हम करते हैं घर घर में जाके, या कोई हमारे घर में भी आके सुन सकते हैं। तो रवि जी ने कहा कि एक दफ़ा ऐसा हुआ कि भाई सिर्फ एक आदमी इंटरेस्टेड था, फिर भी उन्होंने कंटिन्यू किया, 3-4 सेशन किए, फिर लोग जुड़ते गए और करते गए। तो मैंने ये इनकी बात सुन के बहुत इंस्पायर हुआ, और पैंडेमिक का जो टाइम दौर आ रहा है, तो मैंने सोचा कि चलो हम एक दूसरे के पास नहीं जा सकते हैं, तो हाउ टू कनेक्ट विद द वर्ल्ड। कई लोग हैं जो जुड़ना चाहते हैं, तो इस माध्यम से तो मैंने बोला चलो ये प्रोग्राम चालू कर देते हैं और लोगों से जुड़ें। और एक खुशी की बात है कि आप महात्मा लोगों से भी फेस टू फेस नहीं हुआ, लेकिन फेसबुक से एक दूसरे से मुलाकात हुई, और जो भी आप कर रहे हो तो बहुत अच्छा कर रहे हैं। और गुरुदेव जी को हमारा दंडवत प्रणाम भी है, जो आप जैसे लोगों को प्रेरित किया है और आप जाके आगे कर रहे हैं। और मैं जिंदगी में हमेशा यही करता हूँ कि कोई पैसे दान करता है, कोई अन्न दान करता है, कोई तन दान करता है। ये जो हम कर रहे हैं ये ज्ञान दान हो रहा है, ये भी एक काइंड ऑफ दान है, जो ज्ञान हम एक दूसरे को बांट रहे हैं, लोगों को जोड़ रहे हैं, उनको बोल रहे हैं कि भाई अल्टीमेट क्या है, परमार्थ का जो काम है वो अल्टीमेट है। वो तो सब गुरु जी कहते हैं, लेकिन हर एक का समझाने का नमूना अलग अलग है। कई महात्मा जी आए और मैंने जो कमेंट्स पढ़े भी, श्रीन जी, गिरिधर जी के जो भी हैं, तो उनके फॉलोअर भी बढ़ते गए हैं, और काफ़ी लोग मैसेज भी भेज रहे हैं कि इनका कॉन्टैक्ट नंबर दो, और मैंने भी रवि जी को दे दिया है कॉन्टैक्ट। और मैं लोगों से कहना चाहूँगा, अगर और पर्सनल मिलना चाहते हैं, डेफिनेटली मैं बैंकॉक में तो करता रहता हूँ, कम्युनिटी सर्विस में हूँ। मेरा 7/24 आवर्स कम्युनिटी सर्विस ही है, अभी जस्ट लाइक रिटायर्ड ही हूँ। और करते रहते हैं। और फेसबुक पे और इस पे यूट्यूब पे विल कंटिन्यू डेफिनेटली। उसमें आपकी इनपुट डेफिनेटली चाहिए। गुरु बिना ज्ञान कहाँ से पाऊं, हमें गुरु चाहिए। लोग तो सुनने वाले आएंगे, और हम इसको ये नहीं सोचें कि हमें सिर्फ 10 लोग आए आज 3 दिनों के बाद फिर वो भूल जाएंगे। वो तो मसानी ज्ञान भी होता है। हम जाते हैं किसी इज्जत के ऊपर, ज्ञान सुन के आते हैं, 3-4 दिन वो ट्रेडमिल पे रहेंगे, अपनी हेल्थ को देखेंगे, फिर 4 दिन के बाद फिर पार्टी वार्टी शुरू हो जाती है। तो ठीक है, वो करते रहेंगे, हमारा काम है सिखाना। हमारे बच्चे भी कभी कभी टेढ़े हो जाते हैं तो उनको सीधा कैसा करते हैं, हम सिर्फ उनको बताते जाते हैं। तो इवेंचुअली दे कम अप टू दिस लाइन, एक दिन आ जाएंगे। हम सिर्फ ज्ञान बांटे रहें। थैंक यू वेरी मच। जी
Thank you, thank you, Papni ji. We all from Jivanmuktas satsang are deeply indebted to you for inviting us. The invitation to us itself is a great deed of nobility. And over the last few weeks, I've started knowing Papni ji more, and found to realize that how humble and a great soul he is. And also, I cannot stop thanking his wife, Mrs. Papni Thakur, for each session which I have handled from his home studio. She was so warm that she always gave me some food to eat before the session.
Nothing.
I cannot forget it. I cannot forget her, and how humble you are. I'm falling short of words. We are all.
सर हमको भी आके खाना पड़ेगा फिर, हाँ?
आप भी आ जाएं। join us जी।
Our prostrations, Papaji, our prostrations
To you.
humble prostrations.
And thank you for connecting. Jai Shri Krishna and pranams to all our viewers. Look forward to many more sessions and embarking on this digital journey. Jai Shri Krishna and pranams.
जय श्री कृष्ण, जय श्री कृष्ण, प्रणाम।
Jai Shri Krishna. We'll end with the Purnamada, Ravi. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Shall sparsh to all Mahatmas. Jai Shri Krishna.
Pranams to all of you. Jai Shri Krishna.
Jai Shri Krishna.